Good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys doing today? Good, great. My name is Javi. I'm here today to talk to you guys about connecting to Claris Connect with custom webhooks. Now, using custom webhooks, Claris Connect allows us to connect to any APIs or services of our own that we may have, right? A lot of times, we're not using the connectors that they have by default. There are some services that maybe are our own or just don't have connectors available on the market today, right? So how do we connect to those? We'll find out. So during this presentation, the plan is we're going to build a new flow in Claris Connect. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be creating an API of books, of our favorite books. And what's going to happen is we're going to connect to Claris Connect and use Slack to get a random book suggestion, okay? The first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and build a new flow. We're going to have a code workshop. During this code workshop, what we'll be doing is we'll be creating a brand new Node.js server using JavaScript, okay? During that process, we'll also deploy it to the cloud, and this can be a cloud provider of your choosing. For this presentation, I'll be using Google Cloud Platform, just simply because I already have it set up on my machine. After that, we're going to go ahead and take our new web service, and we're going to integrate it into Claris Connect in such a way that we can connect to it and receive a response. And after that, we're going to try out our new flow. All right? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the tech that I'll be using for this presentation today. So the tech that I'll be using is obviously our brand new amazing tool, Claris Connect. Thank you to Claris for that. We'll also be using, on the JavaScript side, we'll be using Node.js, which is a JavaScript runtime environment. We'll be using Express.js. And what Express does for us is Express is a web application framework. So essentially, it'll help us build out our service, our web service. We'll also be using Axios within that service. I'll show you in one of the examples that I've already prepared. And what Axios does, it allows us to send HTTP requests and get responses from right within our web application or our JavaScript application. And lastly, like I mentioned before, the cloud platform that I'll be using today will be Google Cloud Platform. Now, you are not limited to Google Cloud Platform in your own use cases. It's just simply, again, what I have set up right now on my machine, and I have an account set up there for a demo today, okay? So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that we're gonna do today is we're gonna go ahead and open up our terminal. In terminal, we're gonna go ahead and move to our desktop, and the first thing we wanna do is make a new directory with the mkdir command for our new service. And so we'll call this service Connect Books Demo. We're going to move into Connect Books. And for this presentation, you'll be needing, or to try this at home, you'll be needing NPM pre-installed on your machine. If you don't already have NPM pre-installed on your machine, you can go to nodejs.com and download the latest package, and that package will include the latest version of NPM with it. So let's go ahead and run npm init, and what this will do for us is it'll create us a new JavaScript package.json. Essentially, all that does for us is tell us what dependencies this particular web application is going to be using, and it manages those dependencies for us, as well as some startup scripts and stuff like that, and some metadata. So my entry point for this application is going to be a file called server.js that we'll be writing in just a few minutes. Now, if you take a look, there's our package.json there. I'm going to go ahead and open up this file in an editor of my choice, which is Visual Studio Code. And here's Visual Studio Code for us. Let's just make sure that's showing for everyone. What we'll do in Visual Studio Code is the first thing we want to do is create a new server.js file, because that's where we specified that our entry point is. So that's where our app is going to look to start. Once we have our server.js here, let's go ahead and pull in some dependencies. For this project, as I mentioned before, we're going to include Express as well as Axios. So we just give that a few moments, and it will download Express and Axios for us. All right. So if we take a look at this package.json here now, you'll notice that under the dependencies tab here, we have our Axios at the version that we're running at, and Express at the version that we're running at. Now the first thing that we're going to do, and guys, it's very, very simple to use Node.js. It's very, very, very simple and very easy to use JavaScript and Node.js to set up a new web service. And one of the key points to my presentation is to show you guys how it can be done in seconds, right? Now the web service we're going to be creating today is rather simple. In reality, you'd want to have things like authentication, authorization tokens, and stuff like that. We're going to skip past all that stuff and just go with the basic service that'll respond with some data. So the first thing I want to do is import in my Express. We're going to create an app, and this is our app. And so now our app is going to be listening on a port, right? So we're going to create a new port variable, and we're going to assign that to process.env.port. And so what this line here, process.env.port, is it's actually looking wherever your web service is being run, whether that's on the cloud or locally, it'll look on your environment variables for an environment variable named port. And that's the port that it will be using. But however, if that port is not available, what we can do is default to port 8080. And then lastly, our app is going to have to listen. And so our app is going to listen on port, and when it does finish listening, we'll go ahead and send back a response to the terminal that says app, well, let's say listening on port, and I'm going to use some JavaScript string interpolation here just to put this port right in here. There we go. So essentially right now, if we were to go ahead and run npm start, you can see that we have an npm server running, and this server is running at this port. Now let's go ahead and just close that out. In this situation, we're only returning the string, but we actually want to write it to the console. And that's the little mistake there that I made. So let's try that again. So if we do npm start here, we'll see our app is listening on port 8080 because I don't have a port environment variable already set. So let's go ahead and create some routes here for this new service of ours. It's going to be very, very, very simple. So let's say app.get, well, let's make it a post. App.post, and what this is saying is, hey app, I want you to listen for a post request. And this post request, when it comes to the URL endpoint books, I want you to run this function. And this function here is going to take a request, it's going to have a response, and that's going to go ahead and execute in this code block. Now, for the demonstration purposes, let's go ahead and make our own object. In reality, you'd probably want this to be hooked up to another API that generates random books for you, or a database of books for which you can query. So let's go ahead and create a new array here, and this is going to be an array of objects. And so we'll have a title for our books. Does anybody have any suggestion of their favorite books? So we got our books here. So what we're going to do is we're going to check, first off, let's check our request, right? So we're going to say let search is equal to, gosh, I left my typing skills at home, I guess. Search is equal to the request.body.search. So that'll be the field in the request that we're looking for. And what we're going to do then, we're going to res.send, well, let's send JSON. JSON. And what we'll send in this JSON is I actually have a snippet here, and what this does is this line of code right here gives us a random number. So this line of code here will give us a random number, and what we'll do if we find a request that has if search is equal to, and this is what we'll be typing in Slack to get our books. So if it's equal to exclamation book, then what we'll do is we'll run this code. And so what this code will do is we'll set the maximum here to 3. It will take a random book from our books. So let's change this to books. So it'll take a random book from our books up here, and it should send it back to us in the form of JSON. All right, awesome. And else, if this is not what we're getting back in our search query, then we want to send an error, right? So I already have one pre-prepared here. Let's go ahead and grab that. Okay. All right, awesome. So let's take this books out from here. I really don't like it being within this request here, so I'm just going to take that out. So let's take that out and we'll put it up here. And then we'll copy all of this code right into the body of the post. So essentially what should happen here is we're going to send a request, a post request from Claris Connect using webhooks, and if that post request has the key of exclamation books at the let's see, where's at the request body.search field, then we'll send back one of our random books. If not, we'll send back an error that says invalid input. All right, let's go ahead and just test this locally before we go ahead and deploy it. So we can use yarn start or npm. I just prefer yarn as my package manager. So our app is listening. Let's go ahead and see if we can get it locally. Localhost. So let's try that. In our post, yeah, we'll make it a post. In our post, we're going to go ahead and send JSON. Let's go ahead and switch that over to a post. So Postman is an application that allows you to send requests and receive a response. And what it does for us is it lets us see that response right here in the response section, and it lets us type in our JSON as well. So our API endpoint is going to have, like we said before, it's going to have a body called search, right? A field called search in the JSON. So let's go ahead and make that key here, search. And we'll make that search. Just for our test purposes, we already know what it's going to be, and it's going to be books. Just making sure it's going to be book. Yeah, let's make it book. Books. It's going to send us one individual book, so I think it should be book. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this. All right, let's see. Cannot read property undefined. Let's take a look. We're getting an error. Ooh, things are getting fun. Okay, we have SEARC. Do you see a semicolon missing somewhere? No, the semicolon would be here because the if statement would execute, and if that condition is true, it should send us this right here. Let's see. So it's saying that it cannot read the property of search of undefined. Let's see, app.pose. So to troubleshoot this real quick, we'll do a console.log. And we're going to go ahead and say request.data, and that'll give us the data that we're sending over. Let's go ahead and restart this server. Okay, there we go. So the only line that I was missing there was to tell the application to explicitly use JSON. So that's that line that I added up here. It says app.use. Hey app, we want to use our JSON. We want to use JSON format for any request sent and any request received. So if you take a look here, we're now getting our new book suggestion, and if we go ahead and run this, it will actually give us one of our three options each time randomly. Yeah, isn't that cool? So now let's integrate it into Connect, right? Because that's what we're all here for, to talk about Connect, right? So we're going to create a new flow, and this new flow will be, let's call it books demo. Create. And so this is going to be triggered by a Slack action, and it'll be an outgoing Slack action. I've already configured this to my Slack account, so I'm going to select the account that I've already configured. Let's go ahead and save that in. And we'll have an action here. And this action will reach into our webhooks, and it'll send a post request. What it'll send is to our URL. So before we go ahead and do that, we're going to need a way to access this, not just from here, but we want this in the cloud, right? So we can reach it from external services. So let's go ahead and create an app.yaml real quick. What I'll do is I'll just copy this one that I have already. And what an app.yaml file is, this is just a configuration file that my cloud provider, which is Google Cloud Platform, uses. And it's just pretty much your configuration, a standard configuration file. We say runtime is going to be Node.js 12. The environment is going to be standard. And then we set up some instance and scaling limits there. So let's go ahead and hit gcloud, and we're going to name this to books demo, this service. An error occurred. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and commit this to the cloud, and it'll go ahead and upload there. After a few minutes, we'll have our service ready and available to us, and we'll get a link from that service that we'll be using in Claris Connect. In the meanwhile, I'm just going to go ahead and reconfigure this Slack connector. There have been some known issues where connectors just do not refresh tokens automatically, so let's just go ahead and make sure that we can do that. So in Slack, I'll go ahead and configure this with you guys here. So we're going to go ahead and have a new outgoing hook. All right, so we're going to add a new outgoing webhook in Slack, and it's going to go to our URL that Claris Connect provides us. So just to clarify with you guys, that's this URL right here. And our trigger word that we're going to look for is books. Or I think it was book, right? Just singular book. And we're going to go ahead and save that in. Now, in order for this to be saved in Claris Connect, it asks us to send a new trigger. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to open up Slack, which I already have open here. And just in a regular thing, I'm just going to send book. And you know, it's very hard for me to keep track of individual and plural. It's so tough. I don't understand. Okay, so we send book over now. And so this configuration should be set. Let's take a look and see if our service is deployed yet. So our service is indeed deployed. And this is where we're going to go ahead and, oh, wrong one. There we go. This is where we're going to go ahead and be able to reach our service. So let's go ahead and copy this address here. We're going to add a new action here. This action is going to be a webhook. It will be a post request going to this address here, /books, right? Just make sure. Yep, to /books. And the content type will be JSON. And again, we have our key. Our key there was going to be search. And the search, where we're going to get that from, is going to be from our step data. It'll be from Slack. So if we take a look right here, there's our step right there. And we can go ahead and close this out and close this JSON object here. All right, let's give this a test real quick. Uh-oh. All right, so I'm going to save this action in anyways. Sometimes Claris Connect has this issue that I've experienced where even though we're sending back a valid error object, we still get empty error details and message key. It's something I've noted on the community, and hopefully I can hear back for soon. Let's go ahead and just make sure again that we can run this in Postman before we send it out. So this is our same Postman application that we use to send requests. So let's go ahead and see what's going on. Books, of course. There we go. All right. So we can see that it's working here in Postman. It's just sometimes we have some errors in Claris Connect, and I'm not exactly sure why that's happening. But we're going to go ahead and save it in anyways, and hope that everything goes well. So what we want to do on that action is we're going to go ahead and write to Slack, and we'll write to we'll use this account here, and we'll write to the channel, Claris Connect demo, and then the body of that will be oh, that's right, we need to get a response. Well, for now, let's just put some default data just to save it in, and let's test this. Application JSON search is test. Okay, so what I found that I've had to do is manually just, for some reason, again, I'm not exactly 100% sure why, but I've had to actually just go ahead and send it like this once, where I know that it'll work, hopefully. And yeah, so there we go. And so this creates that step data for us and returns that field in the JSON object that we can use. So in reality, however, we want to get that information from Slack, right? Because Slack needs to be what's triggering this for our flow. So we'll go into that Slack and we'll select that text field again, and we'll go ahead and save in this flow. Now what we'll do is here, we'll say that the body that we want to send for the message in Slack will be our title, and we'll say by, and we'll send our author. Okay, let's go ahead and save that in, and we're going to enable our flow. So let's take a look. Let's try this. Let's see if it works live with you guys. We're going to send it book. And guys, we can actually see the history for all of our requests. So this is the request that I just sent. And as you can see, it was successful, right? So if we look back at our Slack now, uh-oh. Well, it says it was successful. Ah, that's why I had the wrong channel. Save. Sorry about that, guys. I know I'm making a lot of mistakes. Just bear with me here, okay? All right, so let's try that again. So let's say book. Please give me a book. And I'm just going to make sure again in our history that that went successfully. Says that it did. And there we go. We got our book here. All right. Yay!
You got the right one.
Yeah. I had already set up a couple of more interesting hooks from beforehand. So let's just take a look at some of those flows. So if I go to my flows here, I have one for lyrics test. This is my favorite. It's sort of the same idea, but this hook here is actually set up to send, let's take a look at it here, connect, no, wrong one, this one here. So this one right here is actually going to send an outbound request in here to our, to an API that returns the lyrics for a certain song, right? So what we do is we first take our search field, we run a regex command on it to see if it matches a specific format, right? Which is exclamation, lyrics, and then we want the name of the song, and then a hyphen, and then we want the name of the artist, right? So we're just making sure that the format is correct there. And if it's not, we're gonna return an error. But if it is, we're gonna go ahead and reach outbound using Axios to our outbound API. And this is a public API, it's not mine, it's just one that I found online that was very cool, that returns to us the lyrics for that song, right? So let's test it out here. I've already got the flow set up, so let's go ahead and test it here, and we'll go to, let's see, lyrics test. Okay, so let's try this. Lyrics. Anybody have a song in mind that they'd like the lyrics to? Oh, Pyramid. Pyramid by Radiohead. Does that look right to you? Pyramid song, okay. Pyramid song, there we go. We're gonna go ahead and send this off to Claris Connect. Let's go ahead and see what our flow is looking like here in terms of our history. So let's check our history. This is our latest one, should be this one here. And so we got a success. Let's take a look here. There we go. There's our lyrics there. Pretty cool, right? A little useless, but pretty cool. All right, guys. That is my presentation for you all today. Now, if you'd like to go ahead and see some of the code that I've written for the lyrics API that I wrote, you can find it here on my GitHub. You can also visit my website and send me a message through there. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to get back with you and help you out on anything you need. Thank you very much, guys, for your time.
So in the logging that Connect is doing, do they have any capabilities for obscuring data or hiding data? Because if you're sitting across confidential customer information, you don't want the payload to be showing up in logs.
In the logging, you mean for the history logs?
Yeah.
So the payload, the JSON payload itself is not encrypted once you're signed into Connect and you're able to see it there. However, if you like that encryption, what you can do is your API or service can send an encrypted token, if you will, like a JWT, and then you can have the next connecting service there go ahead and decrypt that for you so that it remains anonymous.
Okay, so you've probably got the most experience. The value proposition of writing your own APIs versus this for a group of developers sitting in this room. It makes sense for people who aren't used to APIs way more than people who are capable of doing it. What do you see as the value if you can do it your own?
Oh, yeah. Claris Connect limits us for our package that we select for a number of steps that we can run, right? So if you can create an API or a service for something that's not available already through Connect, you're putting in more manpower and hours, so you will be making a loss there. However, you don't really have a limit as far as steps go. It would really go against your cloud account that you're hosting this service on, which is oftentimes cheaper and has a higher limit than what Claris Connect does afford to us. However, that being said, in reality, when you have things like Stripe, Slack, and all these other APIs, they require complex authentication processes sometimes. Some of them maybe not, but some of them do. And on our end, to put in the hours to build out those services and that authentication is a lot of work. Whereas we can go on Claris Connect and have it ready in just a few seconds. Yeah.
The other thing to that is that once you have this set up, you have this customer who wants to keep using it for a long period of time, and then you can pretty much set it up and let it go, because Claris Connect is now responsible for maintaining that API and making sure that it continues to connect, etc. Now, the customer's going to keep paying for Claris Connect, but you don't have to worry about the API changing at some point in the future, and you have to come back to something you haven't touched in a really long time and rework it. So there is the benefit of that. And again, I honestly believe that Claris Connect is going to open up. I think it's got a throttle on right now, and I think they're going to take the throttle off or at least lessen it in the future. So there will be more options with it.
Real quick, an advice that I would give is if you're building a complex flow, right, one that has connectors that are already available through Claris Connect, and you know you want to save those billing hours so that you don't have to necessarily do all that work to build out your own service, you can use Claris Connect, right, for those specific flows. And if you have your an API that you're going to use, right, and if your API is sending another outbound request to another API that doesn't have a connector, right, what I would say is the best way to go about that is have your API itself send the outbound request, because you're saving yourself a step there. If you're going to go hit your own personal API, right, and then send back something to Claris Connect and use that to send another request to another API, that's an additional step that's going towards your bucket allotment, right? So you can save that just by having it in your service initially.